Business Takeout presents
The CockTale Hour with L.A. Wade.
What's up, everybody? It's your girl. This is L.A. Wade, a.k.a. Cocktails with L.A., a.k.a. Welcome to the CockTale Hour. And today I am blessed to have the white-feathered woman, Robin Rice, with us. But before we get into the white-feathered woman, I want to give a shout-out to Business Takeout, who is a not-for-profit social enterprise that really promotes Black wealth and Black entrepreneurship. But a large part of my show has to do with arts, culture, sports, and entertainment. And how do we talk about culture in Canada and within our groupings without talking about our Indigenous brothers and sisters? Mm-hmm. I am so honored and going to be in complete humility with our guest today. Robin, it's nice to have you. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. And it's such an honor to be here on your show as well. I've been watching you for a while. Yeah.
I'm a little crazy. I know that people don't know how to really, digest everything that is L.A. Wade, but it's okay because everybody has a path. And I learned that from watching some of your Instagram posts about owning your journey and how everybody has one. So I hope we get into that. But I wanted people to understand that I had the pleasure of meeting you back in 2017 in my position as registrar at the Transitional Year Program at the University of Toronto. And let me tell you about my impressions of Robin Rice. She's always been this force, but maybe wasn't sure about it before. And it seems like you have gone through a journey to get to who you are today. So like I always like my guests to say, where did you begin and how did you get here?
So first, even saying the word journey, we look at these eagle feathers here, and this is the eagle feather that popped out, and this is an eagle feather with my family journey. So I'm going to start off by Ani Bojo, Indigenous cause, Wabish Gizi Miguanque, Opichi Manomini, Mang Indodum, Negig Indodum, Wasoxing First Nations, Tokaronto, Turtle Island. As an Anishinaabe woman and Anishinaabe Kwe, Ojibwe Potawatomi, I make sure that I always introduce myself in Anishinaabemowin because we know that through residential schools and the acts of colonialism, they had forced our people to give up our language. They've taken it right out of our arms by hurting the babies, hurting the culture, hurting or trying to bury the wisdom that we carried, and then that suffering from intergenerational trauma that had that blockage on who we are and our voice that's created with it. So because we lost this language, and it's a language that we are now, I guess, reclaiming back within who we are, I have to introduce myself in Anishinaabemowin. So I said to everybody, hello, I greeted everybody, but I also let everybody know my name is White Feathered Woman. That's Wabish Gizi Miguanque. My great grandmother, Rosie Rice, her spirit name was She Who Walks in Front. So I drew this picture, and I didn't know that was her name, but it's of her and just all the 7 generations behind, just waiting for him. And that's her walking in front. I didn't understand that until Lee Miracle was explaining something to me at university before she had passed away. And
Lee Miracle passed away?
Yes.
When?
Maybe about a year ago.
Oh my gosh, I never heard.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit about who Lee Miracle was and what she represented, not only in the university, but like to your people?
Yeah, so Lee Miracle was a traditional knowledge carrier and an author and a poet and an artist. And she was just, everything towards me within my journey. I remember walking into University of Toronto in her office, maybe 2019. I was already there for 1 year, but I walked in a year later and I was like, hey, I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Robin Rice. I came in and I said something negative in the negative mind frame, and she was like, no, we don't say that in here. And I was like, wait, what? And I was like, so I got into this little girl mode where my feelings were hurt, And she was like, Robin, you need to come in. We need to do sessions on your child work trauma. And I was like,
wow.
I was really scared and nervous because as much as I heard about who Lee Miracle was, I didn't know who she was. Like, I didn't get to know her like until then.
Wow. What an introduction.
Right?
Do you remember what you said?
Yeah, I walked in and I was just it was something about my family. I have a lot of family trauma due to the residential schools that I didn't understand. And I just walked in and I was like, I think I might have said something about Perry Island and how my reserve is. And then I mentioned something about, to be honest, now I can't even remember the storyline of like the exact words, yeah, of what we said. But after that, I started going into her office every week. I used to bring her a black coffee while I drank my small iced coffee and got an anxiety high in there as well. And we were just talking about how to balance myself from little Robin to adult Robin and what that looks like, because my spirit name is actual white feathered woman means balance. It's a representation of the eagle feather. An eagle feather, this one's the wing part, but the eagle tail is straight. Right. And that eagle tail represents balance. So that eagle is able to soar above those clouds and below. And when they go below, they're able to pick up that tobacco. And when they go above those clouds, they're able to soar over those clouds in the storm. So I say that that is a teaching of balance. So that's who I am. And I've been off balance for years upon years, and I finally feel more balanced than I've ever did before.
I love it. I love it. It makes me think of a rudder. When you said the tail was straight and it means for balance, I wonder if it also means like direction, because that's how it's able to navigate through going over the clouds and under the clouds. And I think that you've been navigating your time through not just university, but through life for a very long time. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about you personally. Like, I know you're a mom.
Yeah. Mom, I'm going to be a new student at University of Toronto. I finally got my certificate at transitional year program. That was a journey and a half. But I'm not going to stop fighting through the system and utilizing my voice in a way that academics don't really look at, but however, they are starting to look at it now. And I am a single mother to a 16-year-old. I was in the system, and when I talk about the system, I was in the jail system as a youth. My whole life was just a really big struggle, which also led me in being a survivor now of abuses and stuff like that. And I can't really pinpoint one abuse because I've been around the whole spectrum of abuses. It's all there, but that's where it got my lived experiences in. So I was in group homes and foster care. I was living on the streets for a really long time. I was involved with the police system. They categorized me as a child prostitute. And I guess that was the whole stereotypical view of Indigenous being drunks, Indigenous having addictions. And we could go on and on and on. And there was just a lot of stereotypical views. But I fought through that system years later. However, I had to hit rock bottom in my life so many different times for those teachings and those understandings on why I'm here and why my name is White Feathered Woman. And where does that balance come from with Opechi Menominee, which is Robin Rice, and White Feathered Woman, Wabishkizi Migwankwe, because I didn't understand where I fit in and I didn't understand who I am. And the amounts of times that I was placed in a fearful situation and something that could have taken my life but didn't. It was a reminder of me being a storyteller, which that's where it gets me to creating my own stories and creating my lived experiences through storytelling, so that not only do I help the youth, but I also defeat that generational trauma that's stuck within our families, because of the genocidal acts of residential schools, because of the fact that 60 Scoop and Millennial Scoop is still here within our communities, and the fact that these stereotypical views on us are still highly out there. And, you know, what I didn't understand a long time ago is nobody wanted to believe our voice. Everybody wants facts, facts, facts. University of Toronto was one place where they were like, facts. Where's the facts on all the babies that were being buried? Where's the truth on that? We were the truth. Me and my Indigenous brothers and sisters sitting in that class having to fight that colonial system. We were there. And so now it's like when those babies did arrive, get dug up and not dug up, I don't like using that words, but
when they killed, what happened to them?
Yeah.
It was the rest of Canada was shocked, but in one way, the colonial education forcing us to learn about Indigenous culture due to the Truth and Reconciliation Act. Oh, I don't know if it's an act, but that whole process. I've been exposed to it by working at the University of Toronto for so long. So in one way, I guess I'm blessed in that sense because I'm able to share it with my family. But I didn't realize how many people didn't really have any connection or clue what had happened to the Indigenous people here in Canada. And that's why when I saw how far you have grown, I really wanted, because I know with you and I, we were able to have real conversations. And unfortunately, they present Indigenous people like they're stuck in a time warp back with their ancestors, and they don't show how irrelevant it is to today. So when those graves got revealed and people started to feel something for the first time in my life, anyway, that I've seen towards the Indigenous community, I felt hopeful. So I interviewed Selena Caesar-Chavannes, who was the former parliamentary secretary to a certain prime minister that we have, and that we won't talk about. Because there are lots of things we could talk about there. But she talked about the fact that you can't have reconciliation without truth. No. And I thought that quote was really poignant to when we were going to talk today. Can you speak about truth and reconciliation? Not just truth and reconciliation, but what was the truth and reconciliation that the government has instituted?
So first, I have to say, because it is true, we use that quote quite a lot. Without truth, there's no reconciliation. And what does that look like? And so this is where I have to say first, September 30th, before the government changed that day, it was Orange Shirt Day by a woman who is a residential school survivor. The government then decided to replace Orange Shirt Day with Truth and Reconciliation Day, which was another form of them, what I believe, taking away from us, our people, as that individual, creating a day for us, but then the government overlapping on it. And I talk about this all the time because it bothers me. Yeah, it bothers me because I'm like, you're just taking another form of what we had and changing it to something that you're not all doing what you're doing.
And trying to be comfortable for people. And to be honest, they need to feel uncomfortable because there's nothing comforting about what happened to those people.
Yeah, it's true. I actually failed my Truth and Reconciliation class at University of Toronto with a 14% while I was out in community jingle dress dancing, because I'm a jingle dress dancer for healing, while I was doing the full work on the ground with the people, and while it was just the worst situation and I failed, and I came to that class every day and I'm like, today I'm not going to be on. However, I will still continue utilizing my voice. When I petitioned all my work, the woman didn't accept my papers. And I got really upset because I'm like, you've seen the work that I was doing. This isn't truth and reconciliation if you're not even trying to help the Indigenous folks who are doing land-based work in community and helping heal. Where's the help in that? It just didn't work out, you know?
That's really I don't know how. That was a big thing with the transitional year program with a lot of our Indigenous students, is they would become re-traumatized going through the colonial education. What ways can people engage in that type of learning from a place that isn't harmful?
Oh, wow. That's
Possible.
Yeah, that's a hard one because I guess before you go into a program like transitional year program, it's about learning those triggers that we have within ourselves. However, the TYP program helped bring out the healing aspects of those triggers. So for me, it was like, okay, how do I take away those real life stories in the program that they used and not put my story in between there? And that's where I wasn't able to separate it, because I was like, that's my story, that's me, like that's my family, that's this and that. And it was just overwhelming. And honestly, the first year I got stuck on so the Toronto purchase, when I was just first speaking about me being a survivor in human trafficking, in abuse, in like domestic violence, I started listening to the story, and Jill Carter, another amazing professor there,
Amazing woman.
yes, was like, Robin, are you sure you want to do this story about Chief Wabakanin, his wife, and the sister? And I said yes. And that story was about the sister being the sister going into a place after they were all selling salmon, which is the chief, the Mississauga of New Credit chief at the time, and his wife and the sister. So they went into a place, stopped there, and this was over by St. Lawrence Market area. They were selling fishes, the salmon. And so when they went into this place, a British soldier by, I couldn't remember his first name right now, but McEwen something, he ended up approaching the sister and saying, well, if I buy you this alcohol beverage in exchange for sexual acts, can we go and do something, And she refused it. Later on that evening, when the chief, Wabakanini, his sister and wife went back to their campsite, they went underneath their canoe because they used the canoes as sleeping. They would sleep under it because that's how big the canoes were.
Wow.
And the canoes are all made out of birch bark, the tree, so they all still have that spirit in it, and it still is a spirit. So then the chief and his wife hear screams from the back, and that was McEwen coming after the sister. We could only assume what happened to the sister if the chief and the wife are dead, but every article that I found didn't necessarily have her story in it, which is really crazy because I obsessed over that for years. Yeah. Not only did they get murdered on my birthday 100 and almost 70 years ago, but it was something that I carried with me because that was a reminder of my story and the abuses that I've been through and all those things that carried along while my abusers were okay utilizing that to me, And this is where I get my healing through, is talking about it, speaking about it. But I didn't know that in the beginning of TYP because I was panicking. I was having anxiety. I was like, I was a mess.
Well, you weren't a mess, but you were just feeling.
Yeah.
You were definitely feeling. And why wouldn't you? Listen to what you're just saying. It's something that the epigenetics of trauma throughout our generations in the Black community and the Indigenous community is highly underrated and not looked at, to see how those traumas are passed on throughout our bloodlines, throughout our spiritual bloodlines. And so you are here as the white feathered woman to show that you have reclaimed something in the face of this, and that this conversation is a part of that journey. And so, and I guess that's what Lee Miracle, I love that woman, and I'm so sad to hear that she's passed, because she really helped. The one thing about Indigenous people, man, the ones that know who they are, they do not mince their words.
No.
This was not a woman. She was so hardcore and such an advocate for the community. And it's a real loss, I think, to have. And I remember when Eileen Antoine was another elder at TYP who eventually then retired as well. You feel it's weird because they never allow true integration of the teachings. So why I wanted to have you on the show is because I feel like when we listen to stories of trauma that happen to groups of people, it's something that people watch, but they feel disconnected from. So, and because we're traumatized, we talk about all of our stuff, and maybe the person listening doesn't know how or where to look or how to handle it. So, I want to be able to kind of bring a bridge so that people can take a walk through it. But we don't teach it into the schools. Like when we talk about the feather, I wonder what comes up in the minds of people when you talk about the jingle dress, like the dancing. They hear it, but they don't know what it is. So with everything that you say, even though it's not your responsibility, it's almost like we have to explain every single aspect of who we are, which is a certain amount of trauma as well. But at the same time, my hope is that it bridges something. So some of the things that you mentioned just then was like about you being a survivor of a really long acronym. G2SPT.
Yeah.
What does that stand for?
So yeah, it's really long, and it was in the beginning murdered, missing Indigenous women and girls. But now, because we're in a different time, and you know, we have this new language that's coming in. However, Two-Spirit has always been in Indigenous communities, you know, and I can't necessarily speak on Two-Spirit because I'm not Two-Spirit myself, and I always like to stick to the stuff that I know. But I also integrate that into my work because a lot of my youth that I work with in community are Two-Spirit. And, you know, it's about having that masculine and female quality to you.
Yeah, because a lot of people will label it either like homosexual, bisexual, but that's not what the Two-Spirit means.
Yeah,
it's more than that. So it's more inclusive in the language for that. So
it's bigger.
Yeah,
and I had those characteristics. I grew up with men. Like I grew up with boys. I was a womanizer when I was a girl, like a young girl. Yeah, I was like, no, I was on the fighting defensive mode. I didn't understand how to treat a woman or respect myself at the time, but it's because I didn't get brought up with, you know, that understanding of how to respect myself as a woman, as a lady, as a girl, you know, and that got brought by over times. Like I feel like I didn't start understanding how to respect myself as a woman until I was in my 30s, and I'm 37. My birthday was just this weekend, and I'm 37 now. So I'm like, it took so long for that journey to get there, but hey, I'm here, and I still have lots to go and lots to learn too.
Hey, I'm here. I like that. Hey, by the way, I'm here.
Yeah.
Happy birthday to you. Happy belated birthday. I'm sure you're still having a hangover from that experience.
Yeah, it was a fun night, but we needed that night. It was 2 years of COVID. We didn't really have anything, so I went all out, and yeah.
I love it. So, okay, so you also mentioned the jingle dress dancing. So what is that, and what does it represent?
So the jingle dress dance came out around the same time as the Spanish flu back in, I think it's 1918, around that time. And it was through a vision, a dream from a grandfather who had a sick granddaughter. And the vision was about these cones on a dress, a healing dress. So this dance is a new dance, like within the powwow circle, I mean. And that's... and when I talk about powwow, that means all of us coming out in our regalias, because they're not called costumes. So one of them is fancy shawl, one of them's jingle dress. So when this dream came to this grandfather, it was him getting the dances out there, and him really him getting the dance out there, and also him getting the teachings of the dance and what those cones represent. So usually we'll get the dreams of becoming a jingle dress dancer when we're in we'll get these visions when we're ready to start making that transition to get those teachings to do jingle dress dancing. So I ended up transitioning into that dance when I was about I think 2018, when I was at the Native Canadian Center. When I was a little girl, the Native Canadian Center used to take care of me. They would never turn me away. The police didn't want me to go there. My parents didn't want me to go there. The Children's Aid didn't want me to go there. So they banned me from the Native Canadian Center.
What?
Yeah. So, but
That doesn't make any sense.
Because nobody wanted the runaway child to go there to their safe space, and nobody really wanted me to be around that place because they thought it was bad news, and they thought that I was causing trouble. But really what they didn't know was, I might have been causing trouble, but I was causing trouble everywhere, not just one place. This was everywhere. And so that's what I mean. Like, a lot of police and a lot of these records on CAS file, when they come back, is only their story. It's not your story in the background. It's what they think that they see or what they assume that they see. And for me, my story was portrayed something different. However, now when I went to the Native Center, and that was my safe space, we had a woman by the name of Barbara Kieran's, and her daughter Jamie goes to University of Toronto as well. And I remember Barb always accepting me in that door with open arms, making sure that I was good, making sure that I was safe, and also making sure that I was eating. And that's why I went back there, because at that time I had my group of Indigenous friends who we're still friends with now, but it's not like how we used to be, of course, because we're all in different places, but we still all are inspired by each other now and have grown to better ourselves, But at the same time, Native Canadian Center was the one who I ended up going back there. I ended up getting teachings on the jingle dress, but I actually we're supposed to look for mentors. I guess that's how we do the whole jingle dress. That didn't happen that way for me. I feel like spirit and my ancestors led me to that because I needed healing, and I didn't know how to ask for that healing because I'm very stubborn, but I also want to do it on my own all the time. So I was like, no, how do we do it on our own?
Right.
And so I got visions of jingle dress, and the Native Canadian Center gave me one of their jingle dress dances to start dancing in. And that's when I started dancing. And when I got this jingle dress, and because a lot of youth from the Native Center used it, when they gave it to me, I ended up smudging it. Washed it. I smudged it which is with our...
I was going to say, you have to explain smudging. And while you're explaining it, I also want to give a shout out to Sierra Lefebvre, I think is her last name. And she was just tapping in about the two-spirit conversation. And she said that it's the opposite of non-binary. We embody both genders, being neutral of both. And she says thank you to both of us.
Awesome.
And thank you to you for, tagging on and listening to the show. I really think more of these kind of conversations need to happen cross-culturally.
Yep.
Because we're settlers here too. We came onto your land. We were brought here forcefully to till a land that didn't even belong to the people that we were brought here for.
Yeah.
And so there's so much trauma between us groups. But I think a part of clearing the air and smudging is one way of purifying things. So let's smudge during the conversation, even.
Yeah.
Make sure that the conversation is pure.
I brought some smudge too. I always make sure I carry my smudge. I always make sure I have my tobacco on hand, which is another gift.
Talk about tobacco. Let's talk about tobacco while you're smudging, because it's such an important aspect of Indigenous culture. So why is that the case?
So it's very important because the tobacco is the first gift that we got from Creator, which is Geechee Manitou, our great spirit that we have. And it was a gift of knowledge. It was a gift of teaching. It was a gift that you place in your left hand, closest to your heart. However, I got another teaching by a woman, an elder by Wanda Whitebird, that we could actually have the tobacco in each hand because the heart's right in the middle anyways. And it's almost like I thought about one day and I was like, what about if there's a person that can't open up their hand or utilize their hand? How are we going to say to that person that that's not acceptable because of your hand. It just didn't make
Exactly.
any sense. So when I started thinking about what Wanda Whitebird had said, I started thinking about certain disabilities that they may not be able to have that within their left hand. So, I agree with Wanda. We could utilize it in both hands, and it's whatever teachings that we have because we come from different nations. So
Right.
this tobacco.
That's another big thing. When they say First
Yep.
Nations, it excludes so many other indigenous groups.
It's a whole, like, when I say we could get into teaching after teaching after teaching, we could literally get teaching after teaching within every part of our conversation because of that.
Yes, every little thing. And it reminds me, just to make it relevant to some of the people that are watching, it's like calling us all African when when Africa is represented by how many different countries. It's not the same thing. People in Nairobi are not the same thing as the people in New Guinea. And so you can't just label people Africans like that. Yes, they're from the continent, but there's differences between them and similarities for sure. But they're different people with their own cultures.
Yeah.
And when you call indigenous people First Nations, you're leaving out a whole bunch of people that are not a part of the actual First Nations.
Yeah. There's a lot of nations, and that's where we all have those different teachings. And what I like to do is hear those different teachings, because no matter what, there's always an intertwined connectedness, but there's always that connection regardless of where we come from. It has to do with the animals, the lands, the plants, the flowers, the water, Nibi, Mother Earth, Akai, our other medicines like sweetgrass, which is the hair and the braid of Mother Earth, and that represents our 7 grandfather teachings, our 7 generations behind and our 7 generations ahead. And that sweetgrass braid teaching is a big, big thing. And that's actually what I named my after school program after, the sweetgrass braid.
Oh, wow. There's so many things that, is it considered appropriation for people who are non-Indigenous to utilize this language?
So that is one thing where, for me, I'm accepting of it. However, I understand the teachings, like our language was already lost. And why was that lost? When we look back on who took it and why they took it, and then how did they harm us in a way? And, I struggle with the English language. And when I look back at it, I wondered why for a long time, but it was probably because we were beaten for talking our language, or my ancestors were beaten for speaking their language, or they weren't allowed to, or we know the stories. But it's almost like I feel accepted about it. However, I guess it's the attention that's used. And I always say, always get it from Indigenous people. Get those medicines from the Indigenous peoples, because they're the ones who are looking after how that sage is grown. They're the ones giving that tobacco for that sage to grow, or to pick that sage to be utilized in a good way, or you know what I mean? So there's a lot of teachings, and I don't ever have an issue. However, when it's being used in a harmful way, or when people, even, I use the word tokenized Indian a lot whenever I speak, because a lot of people used to think, like, why do I speak my language? Why do I wear ribbon skirts going out to public? Why do I wear certain stuff? And I'm like, because that's me being a strong Anishinaabe woman. That's me being who I am and what my ancestors wanted me to carry through. And I will wear my ribbon skirt because it represents my boundaries on who I am. But the opening of that skirt represents that connection to land and who we are as life givers, because we are life givers, however that looks like. But we are able to carry that life. And even our menstrual cycles, we call it our moon time. That's a powerful time. We're not gross on it. We're not like, dirty. No, we teach the youth and we teach adults who don't know that it's a powerful time for us to sit and release all those toxins out of our bodies. And I've also been taught by a couple elders and knowledge carriers in the community, is that these teachings also represent that we're able to give life, that we're life givers, that we could carry that baby within our stomachs. And that's what that's supposed to represent. And the moon time teachings come from the turtle's back and the creation story of my creation story, which is Sky Woman. So it's teachings within Sky Woman, how Sky Woman came and she was pregnant, dropped down on the turtle's back. And if you look at the turtle, it has 13 circles in the middle representing the 13 moons. We don't have 12 moons, we have the 13 moons. That's why even when we're on our menstrual cycles, we sometimes double on 1 month. And I've just started catching on to that.
Wow.
I didn't know, because I was like, wait, like it gets a little wonky on certain moon times, but that's because we have that connection to the moon and the turtle and the water and Mother Earth.
I feel like the indigenous teachings are so integrated, and it's like, no wonder they wanted to write it down.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's an oral tradition, a lot of it, right? So, yeah. But I could see them wanting to package it and then codify it and then make it something other than what it is.
Yeah.
And I think there is strength in having it as oral for myself listening, because it becomes a way of life. It's not something to ritualize necessarily, even though a lot of it has ritual to it. Mm-hmm. It's more like flow. Would that be a correct way of looking at it? It seems like a flow with life, how to live, not necessarily first you do this, then you do that. You know what I mean?
We didn't have that like straight, narrow walk. We always had that zigzag. We used to call it the good life. Mino Bimbat. I'm not even going to be able to say it without it being there, but it's the good life in Anishinaabemowin. And that's the way that we used to live through things. And that's where it comes in with those 7 grandfather teachings is love, humility, respect, honesty, truth, wisdom, and courage. And all 7 of those teachings also have bigger teachings behind it. And they also have like spirit animals behind it, which also, which is also teachings behind those animals as well, because we have clan systems. In my nation, we have clan systems. And I'm Loon clan and Otter clan. That's why I said I'm Nagig and Mang in Dodom, because those are my clans. And when I was 15 years old and I went away to a treatment center, my mom sent me away because they wanted to send me to do a boot camp, but there wasn't one available. So they sent me all the way to Fort Francis, and Fort Francis ended up taking me in, and that's where I was able to utilize my teachings, or gain teachings, and understand who I am. And when I was a baby, when my great grandmother gave me my spirit name, it was lost on paper. And so I didn't find it until I was 15 years old. And when I got that name back, that was through a shake tent, a ceremony. So everything that flows in a certain way is almost like a ceremony all the time, because we got to listen to those messages and listen to those ancestors. At that time, I ended up getting my spirit name, and it transitioned from white feathered girl to white feathered woman, because I was already past that woman phase stage now. And then the clan was Loon clan at the time. It wasn't Otter. I didn't know I was an Otter until I was, I think, 30 years old.
How do you find out what your spirit animal is? And do these things apply to non-Indigenous people?
No, so it is just for Indigenous folks, unless there's like tribes and stuff within their own Indigenous community or Indigenous communities, their own like stories on where each person's from or their own cultures.
Yes.
But my clan, and you know what, we will bring in people who are non-Indigenous and adopt them to our families. And that's, I guess, where that making is. But the clans were really for Indigenous communities to come together with their grandmothers, and their grandmothers were the ones that gave those teachings, had different roles and responsibilities within that community. So Otter clans actually are all about unity. My daughter is half Jamaican, so I bring that very, very much in my home. I probably learned a lot about my culture through the Jamaican culture, because of some of the hair teachings that I got brought up in. And I didn't have my own teachings first. I grew up in the Spanish and the Black community here in Toronto with some of my Indigenous folks, you know, so I had an intertwine of all of them mixed together.
Yeah.
And what that looked like for me to gain my own teachings. And I still pass on the teachings to my daughter because I have to.
Oh,
I have to learn about her lifestyle in Jamaica. She lived there for 3 years when she was younger. I had to learn how to cook all the foods. I had to learn everything. I wish you would cook because that's long cooking by the stove, you know, but that's how I learned about the connectedness within other cultures. And that's how I brought out my own unity teaching and my own circles within what I understand within unity. So that's the otter. They're educational. That's why I'm always educating. No
Yes.
matter what, no matter how tired I am, educate, educate, educate. And then I had that loon aspect, which is leadership within a community. So the loon and the crane grandmothers came together to speak about the internal and external part of a community. So when there was problems, that's when they all come together. So I represent both. I take on both of them because I do still have dreams that I go into dream world in another dimension almost. And it's a beautiful place, like green everywhere. The water's so blue and vibrant. And when I'm flying from the sky, I'm that loon. But when I go down and dive into the bottom, I spin around and twirl up as if I turn into that otter. So that's how I know. Yeah, that's how I know that I have that balance between both, and what that looks like between who I am as an individual, like as a spirit form, as well as a human form now. And those are my gifts that lead to the spirit world as well as the human form.
Man, like it makes me think about, I know the American indigenous experiences is terrible. Like their history is just like horrific. But when I went to the Grand Canyon, there was still a group of indigenous people that were there called the Havasu. And it's the people of the blue-green water. And they grant us permission to walk and hike down into the canyon. And to this day, I've been there 5 times off of the West Rim. I go down into that community. They're very gracious because you want to be respectful when you go to these places. But the water that you just described in your dream exists there.
Yeah.
And I've never seen anything more beautiful. And to this day, I say it's my favorite place in the whole world, which I've hiked Kilimanjaro in Africa, and I've hiked Machu Picchu in Peru. But the Grand Canyon, for some reason, when I go down there with those people, there's something about the canyon walls that really speak to me. And the water that you never would think is in the Grand Canyon is the most blue-green water you've ever seen, with these waterfalls, some of them taller than Niagara Falls, not wider, but taller. And there's something spiritual that happens when you're there. So when you go into your dream state, like what's happening? Do you just zone out? Like how does that happen? And when you learn what it is that you get from that, do you have to go to someone for them to explain what it is that you experience?
So I used to have to go to my elders, my traditional knowledge keepers in community, and my medicine men. But they've also guided me with the right tools to start understanding my gifts and who I come from within my family teachings. And so my family is full of medicine people, artists, as well as dreamers. That's how we get our messages, through our dreams. So when I go through a dream state, I could actually pull myself back into the same dream to get those teachings if I really want. And a lot of my dreams are me being shown to the places that I have to go to either pick medicines, or my dreams will tell me when something's not right within my life, within people, places, or things. I also go to people's dreams to send them messages if they need help, because I guess that's where that helper in me comes from. I wouldn't classify myself as a healer now, but I feel like I'm a healer in training. I feel like I'm an elder in training, and we won't get those teachings for a really long time. But like one of my my helpers tell me, he always tells me that I need to start following my intuition, and I know exactly what's happening and what I'm doing, that I have to stop getting that validation from people, because that's where I need to start trusting myself and who I am. But me not trusting myself has to deal with a long line of trauma within who I was and the decisions that I used to make. That's where I'm learning how to let go and create those healthy spaces within my lifetime of boundaries, and those are where my dreams help me utilize that space that I need. I've been able to catch people on their lies, but I'm such a big-hearted person. I always give people the benefit of the doubt, and then I always hurt myself in the end. But now I'm like, you know what? Boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. I'm pulling up those walls,
Yes.
but I'm also very toxic in my own ways too, because those old traumas have affected my relationship life, like as in male, female, that I've been single for 6 years. And I still find myself going in same patterns because that's my trauma, and now I'm at the stage where I'm like, okay, I need to break that. But how do I break it when I get triggered all the time? And how do I do that if I don't want to trust myself or don't want to trust a situation? But that's where I guess the people diagnose me. And when I say people, the psychiatrist diagnosed me with agoraphobia. You don't trust people. Well, there's a reason why I didn't trust people. Like,
Right. Yeah.
right?
For
There's
sure.
a long list on why I didn't trust.
Yeah. You know what? Cleaving to your culture to make you the leader that you are is, I think, something that, with the basis of the show being something that inspires Black wealth and Black entrepreneurship, I think that there's teachings in your culture that is applicable to a lot of people. And they may not be a part of, how it's processed or how, but within your own culture, there is something that you can gain that can also take you through. So what are some of the key things that you've learned in your culture that would be applicable to other people outside of Indigenous culture? Like, a lot of what you're saying, the boundaries thing,
Yeah.
and working through your trauma is like across the board.
Yeah, it's about healing and like remembering to be kind to ourselves during that healing, because I know that we could be completely mean to ourselves and not think we're good enough, but really and truthfully, we all are good enough and we're all here for a reason. And in my culture, in my teachings, we are taught that we have gifts as each individual, and that we each individual have to accept those gifts but learn how to accept them within ourselves, and not to be afraid to utilize who you actually are within community. And my voice, like, there's a reason why I'm a storyteller. I have a reason. There's a reason why I'm still alive, is because my voice and my story needs to be told, and I'm never going to stop. And I always, when I'm around political leaders, tell them I'm not your tokenized Indian. I'm a strong, powerful Anishinaabe Kwe who's going to educate, utilize my voice, and I'll continue sharing the truth of my past that was very hurtful, but also to keep a clear mind that I did have a happy life, in the background of that all, and how long I went on with a fake smile, and how much people didn't really know how much I was hurting until years ago when I started opening my voice and sharing my story. I could cry on the spot. And the reason for that is because my creation story, when I came down to this world, and this is what a medicine man had shared with me to get me to start understanding things, was my creation story to come down to Mother Earth. Was I wanted to feel every single emotion of every person, every animal, every plant, everything out there. I wanted to feel all the emotions. And to be honest, I feel like a lot of my teenage years and a lot of my adulthood, I have felt so much negative emotions. And now that I'm in that healing stage, and now that I understand what that love feels like in my chest, I didn't understand what that felt like up until like a couple months ago, when I really had to do the work on something that re-traumatized me again. And I I got depressed again. And I'm like, what is this? I'm tired of this circle. How do you break it? And I finally broke through it, but I still have a lot of work to do on myself. And that's not going to stop until, it's not going to stop.
It won't stop. You said, in fact, I saw on your Instagram page, you said, keep learning from each other like the flowers. You had this whole thing about the flowers that I just thought was so beautiful.
I could actually say that really quick.
Yeah, sure.
I
So
dream
beautiful.
about being a vibrant flower. I dream about so there was when one of my first elders started working with me on my journey. He said he's seen me with a bunch of flowers, and I used to pick flowers and put them in my pockets. And I used to love trees. Like when I would always sit by a tree, and that tree used to take away that negative energy off me, because that's what the trees do. And even grandfather sun, you go outside with your arms up and you grab that energy from that sun and ask it to help you throughout that day and to release any negative toxic emotions that we have. And so I almost forgot where I was going with that.
You're talking about the flowers, keep learning from each other in your dream.
Yes. So these flowers came, and this flower was wilted. It kept on dying, but it kept on rebirthing back into vibrancy, like vibrant and beautiful. And that flower was actually me. So that was me at a time when I was so hurt and I had shame and guilt on the inside of me. And with the help of everybody in my life, there's too many people to even name to know how many people have helped me on my journey. I've taken teachings from every single one of those peoples, those spirits, put them in my own basket, and utilize my own teachings in a way where I could teach it to other people, not just Indigenous youth, but seniors, everybody, like all people. And that's what I really want to do or that's what I have been doing, is inspiring others as much as they have been inspiring me with their stories. And I love sharing. And this beautiful, vibrant flower I really do believe that it's me. And that's how I understood, where people were like, now you're glowing, now you have this glow around me. I could finally see that glow, and I could finally see that flower not wilting no more. And when it does wilt, it's just rebirthing itself to grow back again. And I call myself a seed planter. Throw seeds of ideas to other people. And I'm like, that's what my gift is too, is throwing those seeds and leaving them there and watching them grow to that vibrancy of who they are.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing all of this culture with us that I think is missing from, we could talk about the political stuff, about the, pre-1950s, the Indian Act, all of these things that they did to suppress the voice, that because you're the earth, so no matter what concrete you put over the earth, it will break through. So while they try to wilt the Indigenous people and the Indigenous voice, like the vibrant flowers that you're talking about, you can't. It's going to grow back, and everybody is seeing it now. And I want people to know more than anything that these are your stories as well within your own cultural group, and that there's ways that you can honor and respect somebody else with what they're going through without diminishing your own light. We can all shine together. And I have one question for you about, what's next for Robin Rice, and what do you thirst for? What are you still thirsty for more than ever?
This one I feel like crying for some reason, but
I'll cry with you.
I want my story out. Yeah.
Don't worry.
I want my story out in a book. I want to do documentaries, and I've learned how to do documentaries in a way with pictures and storytelling. And I want my voice to be out to the point where I want to be written in the books. And that may sound really cocky, but to me, I know that I could get there, and I know that I deserve to be there. And I want my story to be in movies, because I really believe that my story had so much stuff to it, but also so much teachings at the end of it. And I've never felt so proud of myself in my life, and I get to share that with my teenager daughter. And when I was her age,
So
there's
beautiful.
nothing like that girl, that young woman. And that's where I broke those barriers. That's where I broke that trauma within the families. And that's where I started to create my own teachings and my own after school program and being involved with the youth and being an advocate to missing murdered Indigenous women, girls in Two Spirit, and what that looks like in community in a good way. And I'm always triggered within community because there's a lot of things happening within community that you see, but it's how do you help people? And I don't even care if one person comes to my youth group, as long as that one youth is gaining something out of it. It's not about the numbers, I don't believe. It's about the individuals. It's about the people who are gaining that. So I'm not going to stop. I'm going to go and get my diplomas at University of Toronto, because that, to me, decolonizing white papers and what that looks like, and how do we decolonize those white papers and not go back to all those traumas about what they think Indigenous people are, and see these powerful Indigenous peoples excelling over that colonialistic state that we have, that state that's there to hold us back, because that it's not our way of learning.
No, it's not. And I love that they have that course that the Western science versus Indigenous science. And when you learn about the culture that you represent and what you are birthed into. I remember Robin Rice, who walked into my office in 2017, versus the woman who I am now interviewing on my show. You have definitely transformed Butterfly. I remember there's something about a butterfly and the strawberry that's really important to you. And we can end with that little teaching there about the butterfly and the strawberry. But you have become that eagle that is directing your way, and you're going in and out of those clouds that you described. And it's just really, really beautiful to see. And I love that you use your culture and your story to reclaim a part of this world for yourself and your daughter, to break generational bonds, and to free the rest of the people from your culture that doesn't know the information that you have. You are a gift. You all around is a gift. And I'm so happy that you're here to share this knowledge with us. So just quickly, if you can be quickly, I don't know, it's so important, but the butterfly and the strawberry.
So the butterfly is a representation of coming into, is it the dragonfly?
I think so.
It's the dragonfly, because I'm like, wait, I don't really have the teachings. Butterfly is more the fancy shawl, but dragonfly. So dragonflies are on my jingle dress, and that's because I went down to the river, Humber River, and I go and talk to my grandmothers down there, and I always see butterflies standing beside my smudge bowl while I'm smudging, or my teas while I have my teas on hand, or my berries. And I bring strawberries and berries down with me, because strawberries are representation of love and forgiveness. And I have a lot of forgiveness work to do on myself and other people. And I have a lot of love to give myself and to other people. So it's always a reminder of what that strawberry is, and that dragonfly. So the dragonflies, I feel closer to my ancestors. And I also feel like I'm the messenger for some of those ancestors sometimes, when I allow that spirit to speak through me, because that's my gift of the ancestors giving back to me, and teaching me what type of path that I need to be on.
I love it. That's such a great place to end. Robin, thank you so much for joining the CockTale Hour. Thank you to everybody who was watching and tuning in. This is the CockTale Hour, and we have intimate and sobering conversations about arts, culture, sports, and entertainment. I'm your host, L.A. Wade, and it's brought to you by Business Takeout, a not-for-profit organization that is inspiring Black wealth and Black entrepreneurship. And I don't want to appropriate the language, but Shimagwich, because I am so honored to have you here. And thank you for sharing with us today.
Yes, Chimigwach and Bama P, because we have no word for bye. We have see you later.
I love it. Okay, everyone. We'll see you later on the CockTale Hour. Take care.
If you enjoy our programming and want to If you enjoy our programming and want to help support Black entrepreneurship, please donate today. www.businesstakeout.com/donate.
Yeah.